So this will be more of a learning together kind of thing. We started Shir HaShirim last week. I want to continue from the point where we stopped. Just a reminder, we said Shir HaShirim is a couple of shirim, couple of poems put together into one poem, and it seems like the combination between them creates some sort of story. We are trying to figure out who are the characters in the story. Who are the characters? I suggest to read it not only as a story but as a play, as a classic play where you have the one or two main characters and then the how to say counter characters who are against or the other side of the main character, and then you have the chorus who's sort of responding to what's happening, in a lot of dialogues, monologues, and dialogues, which create this story, right? So we have to understand the story by the female and the male each talking, very, very much verbal. So that's one big thing. We're trying to understand what kind of people are these lovers. What are their statuses? We gave three options. We said one option is that the re'aya, the woman, is maybe a simple woman, or it comes from a simple family, or a shepherd. She's even a shepherd herself. Maybe she's from En-Gedi or somewhere in the areas of Judea, and the dod, who's the spouse, who's the other side. It could be someone like her. It could be someone like her, and she's so in love with him, that she compares him to the king. She compares him to the king Shlomo, the king of the time, out of love. That was.
Wait, you're saying that the person that she's loving is not actually the king. It's
he's a simple person. This I'm given three options. So option one is that they're from the same type of, I would say, level in society. They're both simple people, but she compares him to the king. So every time we say that she speaks about him or about the king, it's sort of comparing him to that status. Different approach. The second approach is that he really is the king. The king is really her beloved, and she comes from a more simple or unexpected place to be the king's lover, and that's where this dissonance happens. And the third option is that she is in love with a simple person as her, or even a person that's lower than her. How do you say ma'amad?
Status
in society, right? So she might be really in a higher status, a status that's appropriate for the king, and even maybe engaged or married to the king, but still has this love to someone who's simple. That's I think that's something we know, right? From Disney, or right, or from these sort of places where the status is, right, where a person's drawn to something that's not from his world, or not from his status, or not from, and that's where the love is really powerful. So those are the three options. We explained about that, and then we said that we hear her starting to describe her love with these monologues, and we finished with what she hears from what we hear from the chorus, from her friends. So I'm gonna share screen. Okay, so you might hear some sounds in the background, but it will be okay.
He's acting out the
love.
Exactly, the passion. It's the passion that's coming through.
Okay. So we hear we at the end of the first scene, if we look at it as a play, so she's on the stage and she approaches the girls, the choir, and she says to them like this: "Ishbati etchem benot Yerushalayim b'tzvaot o ba'elot hasadeh." I adjure you, right? I make you take an oath. Im ta'iru ve'im te'oreru et ahava ad shetechpatz. Please, or you may not awaken or arouse the love until it is pleased. And this is what we finished with this need to give space, right? Steinsaltz speaks about this in his Pirush, how sometimes love becomes, and we'll see this also, there's psukim in Shir Hashirim that describe this, but love could be something very demanding and even in some cases, I would say brutal or even offensive. And something about the love here, she understands that even though she is in such yearning and with such love for him, she still wants to give it space for it to be the right time and not make somebody or make him love before it is aroused. How do you say arousing, or before it arises? But Rav Steinsaltz comments here also another thing that's important to know is that when could you say don't awaken the love? When you are very safe that there is love. Meaning she is so sure that the other side loves her, so she's willing to wait. Understand the point? The point is that you're willing to wait and you're not in a hurry to actualize the love that you have for someone when you know that the love exists and it's not under any threat. If there's something threatening the love, so then she wouldn't be able to wait, right? Be waiting calmly for the love to happen. We're gonna see that maybe soon this is gonna change. She's not gonna feel so safe or so sure of it. Okay, and why is she so sure? Or I guess while giving the man his freedom, this is what she says, this is what she describes. Kol dodi hineze ba, medaleg al ha'arim mekapetz al hagvaot. She hears the sound of her beloved leaping over mountains and bounding over hills. I want to say that I'm going to try not to stop on every pasuk, because if we'll stop in every pasuk, there's so much what to learn in them, and we won't get the bigger picture. But I'll try, but I can't promise that I'll succeed, because a pasuk like this, where she's describing her beloved, so she says his voice, the voice of his feet maybe, or the voice of him coming, you hear it leaping over mountains and bounding over hills. Now, if you look in this, what is the difference between medalig and mikapitz? What is the difference between, right, the sleeping and this jumping, I would say, over? And what is the difference between mountains and hills? What?
I remember we learned this before.
Remember this pasuk, right? So we learned this pasuk before we learned. You're the most. You get 100 in an exam. We learned this pasuk before we learned Tanach. I did the series about Rav Steinsaltz, and I spoke about this notion where Rav Steinsaltz really spoke about when does a person have an ability to leap over something, right? Where usually we tell a person to go in the right path, right, and to do something according to the levels and stages, and you finish one stage and go to another stage and go to another stage. So when you look at the context, you see that it gives it a very interesting twist, because the pasuk before, she says, please don't awaken the love of my beloved. Why? He needs to give him his time. Give him his time. But then she says, I hear him jumping over, meaning not taking his time. I hear his voice doing these leaps, these medaleg, which is not the natural sequence of things. And the question is she really hearing this, or is she imagining this? Rav Steinsaltz brings this in his Pirush, that many of these things could be debated. Where is she really hearing the voices, or is she imagining them? Now, what's important for me to say is, even if she's imagining it, she's not imagining something that's not real. She's imagining something that's real, but not happening yet. That's important. She's not, I would say, fantasizing about something that's not a reality. She's dreaming about something that she's sure that's there. So even though she can't see him, she could hear him. She could visualize him. She could see him, even though she's not there. That's according to the Pirush that she's not really hearing or seeing. But if we go maybe with another Pirush, is that she really hears his voice. And then she says, Domeh dodi litzvi o le'ofer ha'elim. She describes him as a deer or a gazelle, or a deer. Now, where does she says he's right behind the wall. He's right behind the wall. What is this description? Meaning, she's so sure he's here, but she also knows that there's a wall that's separating between her and him. She can't touch him. She could hear him. She could maybe, it seems to her, domeh letzvi, domeh, it seems like dimayon, right? Like imagining, or he's described as a tzvi ofer hayolim, and it says, mashgiach min hachalonot matzitz min hacharakim. He's looking in between the cracks and holes. Now, again, we're trying to look at the pshat picture, but obviously the analogy, again, to God, to the relationship between God and Am Yisrael, or God and in the individual soul, this is a very important pasuk, because we're saying, even if you're far from him, do you see that he's peeking at you from the cracks? He's looking from the windows. There's an ability to continue a relationship, even a vision or some sort of eyesight, between the walls, from the other side of the wall. Now this becomes a dialogue. Now, Anna Dodi Amarli, it's his words, but she's saying he's not talking yet. So it's still the monologue. I made a mistake. It's not a dialogue, it's a monologue. Because she's saying, Anna Dodi Amarli, my beloved answered me and said to me, Kumilach ra'ayati afati ulchilach. Right? What did he say to her? Wake up, get up, my darling. He says here, arise, my darling. Rayati should be my beloved. Yafati ulchilach. You should go. Now, one of the big things we're going to see here we see here in Shir HaShirim is that a relationship is always every side of the relationship many times is a mirror to the other side. So what did she say 2 psukim ago? Al teiru ve'al te'oreru. Don't arise the love before it's time. So what is he answering her? What are you waiting for me? Go. Give me my space. You wanted to give me my space, so go. You can't also give me my space, but also wait for me and look for me between the cracks. So he's telling her, Anna dodi ve'amar li, kumi lach ra'ayati afati ulchilach. Right? Go home. כי הנה הסתיו עבר, הגשם חלף הלך לו, הניצנים נראו בארץ, עת הזרמי רגיע, וכל התור נשמע בארצנו. He has an explanation. Why should she go? Because the weather is changing. The winter has passed, and there's no more rain. Go. There's nothing is going to harm you. The winter, you could get cold, you could get stuck in the rain. Now is the time to go. Everything is blooming. התאנה חנתה פגע, והגפנים סמדר נתנו ריח. קומי לך רעייתי יפתי ולחילך. The trees are blossomed and fragrance. Arise, my darling, my fair one, come away. I don't think this is a good translation. What does come away mean? Come means come to me, no? Or does it mean?
Yeah.
I don't understand lechilach as come to me. Maybe that's a different perush. I never saw that perush. Lechilach is like lech lecha, go for yourself.
So they haven't translated it that way. So come away means with me away.
Come, right.
When you say come, it means join me.
There's a Nora Jones song, "Come Away with Me." No, that's but anyways, over here it could be a perush. I'm not saying there's no perush like this, but I thought pshat is that he's telling her now it's your time to go, and I thought that is a mirror for her saying to her friends, don't arise the love, right? Don't make the love wake up. So when you say to someone, take your time. So he says back to you, no problem. Now you go, go off. I need my space. He wants a space. But there's also another aspect here when he says to her, when he's saying to her, the trees have blossomed and have given fragrance. The te'ena is the fig tree. And the giffen is the vineyards, right? This is also analogy to her herself, meaning you are now in a state of blossom and fruitful, and maybe he's telling her, don't waste your time waiting for me around, right? You're ready to go. When you say someone go, right? Also holds in it, go and find someone else, maybe. יונתי בחגבי הסלע בסתר המדרגה, הראיני את מראייך, השמיעיני את קולך, כי קולך ערב ומראייך נווה. But now we have suddenly he is speaking. He himself is speaking. And he says, up to now, it was words that she said in his name. But over here, it seems like he's speaking. And he calls her a dove. And he says, Yonati b'chagvei asela, b'seter amedrega. Har'ini et mar'aich. You are, where does the doves live? Naturally, not like today. They like to put themselves in places where they could hide in different holes in the wall or in between the rocks. And he says, you're in between these rocks, but show me yourself and Ashmini et kolech. I want to hear your voice. Let me hear your voice. Ki kolech arev u'marech naveh. Your voice is sweet and your face is calmly. He says, marech, your appearance is beautiful. And over here, again, it's the mirror. She's saying, I want to see you between the holes, the cracks. And he's saying to her, I want you to come out between the hidden area. So I think that what's going on here, and if anybody has another take on this, what's going on here is in one hand, they're not seeing each other. They're both hidden, but they're also both telling each other, give me space, but I want to see you. Right? There's this, I would say, they're not sure of themselves here. Right? Do I really want this space or do I want you to, or do I actually want to see you?
Shlomo.
Okay. Now she's, yeah.
On some level, do we know if that's literal or more metaphorical? Because really, isn't that every intimate relationship of the duality between the push-pull of being revealed, being vulnerable, staying hidden, staying safe, like that? I'm just wondering if there's that sort of deeper dynamic that's just part of a relationship.
It's part of the relationship, but I think that it's brought here in a very
literal way. But are we supposed to read it in a more sort of figurative?
Yeah, I think for sure this is a mashal for relationships and as I say all the time, between the relationships between God and the people of Israel and God and the soul, right? In some way, you know, does a person hear this calling into him? Right? Your soul is hidden, and the analogy of something peaking all the time in between is an analogy. As I said, every analogy here could be taken for a shiur of its own. But the analogy of something being peaking has been brought with the Nevi'im in many times, and then afterwards in Chazal, and then in other commentaries. So I'll just say one or two associations that I have in my mind. Chazal say about Avraham Avinu, a very famous Midrash, right? How did Avraham Avinu know God? He saw a palace lit. There's perushim, they're either lit by fire or lit with lanterns. He sees this big palace, and then the Midrash says that Abraham asked, Miu Bala Bira, how could it be that there's such a big palace with lights in it? And who is the owner of this palace? And then the Midrash says, Hitzitz alav Bala Bira ve'amar ani hu Bala Bira. Hitzitz means peeked at him. I always, when I read that Midrash, I always think about these psukim. Because what happens there? He sees this beautiful structure. He says, who does this belong to, right? He looks at the world and said, who created the world? Or how could God look at this kind of world? And then God peeks at him, says, I am the creator, but then hides himself again. And it's also similar because he says, lech lecha, which is similar to lechilach, right? Lechilach is very similar to lech lecha. So that's why I always have that association of that midrash over here. But what happens there? The peeking, when somebody looks at you, shows himself, reveals himself, but then hides himself, right? You're speaking about, Ali, about being vulnerable, but part of the game is that exposing and then concealing again. That creates a lot of hope, but also a lot of pain. The other association I have is a very famous, very famous opening of Moreh Nevuchim. Moreh Nevuchim is the Rambam's guide for the perplexed. And the beginning of the book there, which is a very complicated book, I'm trying to read it ala seder, and it's really, really complicated. I like to say, when you could say the word perplexed in English, that means that you really need to read the book because you got to the mistake of saying that word. But what he says there in the beginning, he says that he brings the pasuk from Yeshayahu, Ha'am olech b'choshech ha'hu or gadol. And if I'm not mistaken, that's the pasuk. But basically what he says is that the world is dark. And a person sometimes has what he calls them brakim. He has lightnings that give him some light, and then it becomes dark again. Now for the Rambam, the question is, how many lightnings do you have? And how strong are they and how frequent they are? But the Rambam says a person lives in dark. A person does not see God. He sees sparks. Flashes. Thank you. That's the word. So it's very famous. It's called, I don't know what they call it in English. In Hebrew, Ma'amar Brakim. It's a very famous place where the Rambam basically describes I would say, the existential being of a person as a life in dark. Right? A person should not expect to be in light, to be revealed all the time, for God to be revealed all the time. And I think that that's what's going on here, is that they know that part of this being, part of the game, is that they're concealed. They're not fully exposed yet. But what do you do when you're closed, when you're on the other side of the wall? And we're going to see it even stronger in a moment when there's a real drama. But I see that. And I love mitapek. I can't. Every pasuk here really. But I'll say quickly. What happens is that what do you do when you're behind the wall? Do you try to peek? Do you try to look in between right? I'm not telling you now to close to break the wall. But I am telling you to arise your voice, to show something, to do whatever you can in the situation of separation.
Hey, Shalom.
Yeah.
This is just a quick question, a little bit of a tangent, but does that apply also? Does that concept apply to like modern day, or does it apply to like everybody? Like, does it apply to like Avraham Avinu? Was he also like walking around in the dark most of the time, and then they just with the flashes, or they don't address that? So
what the Rambam addresses is that nevuah, a person who has nevuah, he has a more frequent light. for the Rambam, the main character is not Avraham Avinu, it's Moshe Rabbeinu.
Yeah, I was going to say Moshe Rabbeinu. I was going to say
and
maybe.
Moshe Rabbeinu, when you see this parashas that we're reading, he got to this place where he constantly had light, but he was very unique in that way. That's why we say that he was the biggest Navi. There was no Navi as Moshe Rabbeinu because he had light constantly. All the other Naviim have it come and go, come and go, come and go.
Isn't that the sort of part of the derivation of just this past week's parsha with the
right
with the mask, with the mask?
He has to wear the mask because he's constantly in light.
In the light, yeah.
Right. But I think to bring it to our lives, right? The question is, what do we do when we don't have a constant light? And the question is, are we able to pump, I guess, or I don't know, pump it, or to, I would say, letachzek, we say in Hebrew, to handle, to continue something, to maintain, that's the word, thank you, to maintain something while being in dark, while being in separation. When he says to her, Hashmini et kolech, right? Harini et marai hashmini et kolech. He's asking her to be active from where she is. That's still not being together. That's still not connecting. That's still not intimate, but it is creating some sort of relationship from afar. So she's continuing, and she's saying, "Echzu lanu shualim ktanim mechablim kramim uchrameinu smadar." So now, when something good happens, then there's those who come and ruin it, and these are the foxes. Catch us the foxes, the little foxes. And Rabbi Steinsaltz explains that foxes are not an animal that is torif, that eats other animals. But the fox does not really, not a predator, or at least for human beings, he's not such a threat. The only threat we have from foxes here, we have foxes down in the Vati here in Tkoan. The only threat that we have from them is that they have a rabies, some of them. So if they come close to a person and they bite him, so we're afraid of a rabies, but that's not a threat. He can't harm a person or even a different animal. But what does he do? He just ruins. He ruins the vineyards, mechablim kramim. So he comes to the vineyards and he eats he says that their blossom, the grapes, when they're not totally ripe. He eats them before they're even ripe. That's the worst thing you could do, right? You're not even, if the grapes would be ripe, we could pick them, but before they're ripe, the fox comes and eats them already. And that's something that this is something that is starting to have a problem with this love between them, because there's other parties that are ruining it. And she says, Dodili v'ani lo haro'eh b'shoshanim. And here's again a relationship. Dodili v'ani lo. Right? I am for my beloved. My beloved is mine and I am his. So later on, we're going to see the pasuk, Ani ledodi v'dodi li, where she puts herself first. But over here, she puts him first. Dodi li v'ani lo. He's mine, or I would say he's devoted to me and I'm devoted to him. Haro'eh b'shoshanim, right? The one who browses, who is a shepherd amongst the lilies. And she says like this, Ad she'afuach hayom, until the day fully rises. V'nasu atzlalim, and there will be no more shadows. Sov right? And she says, flee, see out my beloved, swift as a gazelle or a young stag for the hills of what does it say? Spices? Okay. But what is she saying again? She's giving back to him what he says to her. Because he said to her, Kumi lechi lach rayati afati, go for yourself, right, my beloved. So now she says, well, there's too many clouds. It's not clear yet. So you should go, flee, and be as a deer. Mm-hmm. I remember this is this week was Rav Fuhrman's Yortzeit. Rav Fuhrman had a very special relationship with his wife, and they were together and always together, and it was a big thing that he spoke about and lived. And I remember when he died, some way throughout the burial, she burst out saying this pasuk. She said to him, flee and go away. And it was very, very chazak to see it in that moment where she's saying to him, now it's dark and you should go and we'll meet up later. Okay, so this is the first, I would say the first scene that we're finishing on the stage. And now we're getting into the drama, into where she's describing something that's happening. Al mishkavi balelot, bikashti et she'ava nafshi, bikashtiv velo metzativ. Al mishkavti, it means while I was in my bed at night, I asked for my love. Bikashti et she'ava nafshi, I sought the one I love, but what my soul loves, nefesh, right? Bikashtiv velo metzativ. I asked for him, I looked for him, and I couldn't find him. Where did she look for him? She's in her bed. So she's looking for him maybe in her bed or in her house, right? This seems, she's in the bed at night and she's looking for the beloved and he's not there. Is this someone that she was with him before? Or is she imagining something? What's going on here? But at night, and then she decides to do something. Akumana v'asoveva ba'ir b'shvakim u'barchovot. So I woke up, I got out of bed, and I started wandering through the city, the shvakim or the marketplaces, rechovot, in the different streets. Avaksha et she'ava nafshi. I asked for him everywhere. Bikashti velo matzativ. Now, when is this happening? In the middle of the night. She's walking around the middle of the night. Metzauni hashomrim. And who is in the streets in the middle of the night in the city? The guards. Now, if you remember, I said that I spoke about this last shiur, I said that if we look at this as a play, so, in between every scene, the question is, what is the, how do you say, tifora? What is the background? Mm-hmm. Right? The backdrop. So it could have been before that she was speaking as a shepherd or somewhere very open. And now she's in the city. So this has to do with Yerushalayim, right? Not Yerushalayim. So she's walking around the city at night and she asks the guards. Now this question, if this is a tact thing to do or not. Why? Because the guards are maybe the ones to know if they saw someone, because they're walking around and seeing everybody. but the guards are also seeing her now. You understand what I'm saying? When you go to the police and ask for someone, they also ask about you. It's like, 1 minute, who are you? What are you doing out here in the middle of the night? Now, over here, it's not happening yet, but she's already putting herself into a problem because she's going to the authorities. Okay, so Mitzauni, right? They find her. She didn't go to them, but she's asking them, Mitzauni shomrim asovim ba'ir, et she'ava nafshi reitem, she's asking them, did you see my beloved? Kimat she'avarti mehem. It was almost that I left, that I passed them, ad shematzati et ahava nafshi. But I found the one I love. So it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile for someone who in the middle of the night feels lonely and looking for his beloved to get up and look for him because she finds him. The mashad here is amazing because, right, what happens? Sometimes a person has an awakening and he gets up and does something with it. He gets up out of bed and in the middle of the night and looks for that what he's yearning for. And she finds him. Achaztiv velo arpenu. I held on to him and didn't leave him. Now this is already achaztiv. This is a problematic word because le'echoz is to hold something with strength even. So now she's holding on to him, right? She's sort of holding on to him in a very powerful way, with a strong grip. I did not, she's not in that space of giving him time anymore. She needs him and she holds him, right, in a very strong way. Until I brought him in Beit imi ve'el cheder orati. She took him to the room of her mother, in the room where she was conceived. Now this is Ali, you need to bring all of Freud into this pasuk right now, right? She's taking her beloved into her parents' bedroom, into her mother's bedroom, into the place where she was conceived. Now, I don't know how to explain this pasuk with all its depth, but what I could say is that she gets up at night, maybe from her own room, from her own place, and she finds him and she holds him, she grasps onto him, and she takes him to the most primal place of her life, to the most, right, to what's before her own identity, to her mother's room where she was conceived. She approaches again now the choir, her friends, and she tells them to take an oath. She says the same word. What is she saying here? She's describing that she held on to him, but she's again reminding herself, wait for the time. Why? Because it seems she has to say pasuk hey, because it seemed like pasuk dalet didn't work. She took him with strength into the chambers of her mother where she was conceived, but then she looks at her friends and she says, please don't awaken the love until it's time, right? I think the underlay of what she's saying, I tried that and it didn't work. I held on to him, I took him, I brought him, but he was able to, but it didn't work. He ran away, or we don't know what happened, but it seemed like it didn't work. Okay, I don't know if what I'm saying, nobody's commenting, so I hope it's clear, or I feel like it's such a unraveling. All this is not necessarily clear, so I hope you're following.
It's fun. Okay.
Okay.
Following.
Pasuk Vav. Mizot olam min hamidbar. I'm going to try to read a little quicker to get to a couple more things today. Mizot olam min hamidbar ketimrot ashan. Mekuteret mor ulvona mikol avkat ochel. Right? Who is she that comes up from the desert? This is already another song, another one of those we spoke about last week. The Song of Songs is a chain of these tabaot. So this is another one who's saying, who is she? Who's coming up from the desert with all these smells and fragrance, right? That would bring avkat rochel. The merchants would come from the desert and bring, right, on their camels, all these special fragrance from, I don't know, from India, right? From the east would bring it into Eretz Israel. And they're saying, who is this that it seems like she appears from a different place. הנה מיטתו של שלמה, 60 גיבורים סביב לה מגיבורי ישראל. We're describing the bed, the couch, he says here, of Solomon, of King Shlomo, which is surrounded with 60 soldiers from the warriors of Israel. Kulam achuzei cherev, melumdei milchama. All of them are trained in warfare, skilled in battle. Ish charba li'ocho, each with a sword on his thigh, mipachad le'elot, because he is afraid at night. I'll read another pasuk. Apirion asa lo HaMelech Shlomo, me'atzeh Lebanon. King Shlomo made himself a beautiful bed with a canopy made out of cedar wood. Amudav asa chesef, with poles that are made out of. Wait, where's this? Sorry. With poles that are made out of silver, and I just, jumped up. Poles made out of silver, and refitato zahav, and the blankets are made out of gold, merkavo argaman, with red sheets. Tocho ratzuf ahava mibnot Yerushalayim. The inner part of his bed is full of love from all the maidens of Jerusalem. Tzena u'ena bnot Sion v'melech Shlomo ba'atara she'itra lo imo b'yom chatunato v'yom simchat libo. Go out and see bnot Yerushalayim, the girls of Yerushalayim, the king Shlomo, with the crown, ba'atara she'itra lo imo, with the crown that his mother gave him, b'yom chatunato b'yom simchat libo, in the day that he got married, and in the day that he was in bliss. What is going on here? What is this poem doing here, speaking about Shlomo HaMelech? And what is the meaning of this poem? It's describing Shlomo HaMelech having all these soldiers around his bed out of fear at night. Maybe because a king, when he goes to sleep, is afraid that somebody will come and kill him and take over his kingdom. Or maybe something else he's paranoid from, that he needs to have 60 soldiers surrounding him. But then she speaks about this beautiful bed that he had made for himself with all the best wood and all the best quality of beauty. And she says to these girls, go out and see King Shlomo with all the crowns that his mother made him in the day of his marriage. So what is this doing here? There's two ways of explaining it, and maybe there's three if anybody wants to say another. I'll give the two sort of directions we could go here. It seems like this is a stop. How do you say methodical? Metodi? Matzira metodit? Is that the
methodical?
Yeah, because you say methodical pause in the story. In Hebrew, we would say atzira metodit. I don't know if there's such a. You say a story, and you get to some peak, you sort of go out and put previews or do something that's supposed to like echo from a different area. So either she's coming and saying, let's look at what love looks like. Let's look at the ideal love. What could be the ideal love? Shlomo Melech. And how does that look like? Right? In between, after all this intensity of being close and being far and looking for him and giving him space, she's stopping, the poem is stopping and describing the ideal love. What could be the ideal love? King Shlomo, he is so powerful that he could create this beautiful bed and hold and also create the best guards around him so nobody would how to say would right, hurt the love that is happening in this bed and with the crown that he got from his mother on the day of his wedding. That's one way of looking at it. But the other way of looking at it is that this is meant to be a cynical comment. While we're describing the real love between this, between these two unclear, right, characters, the man and the woman of Shir HaShirim, we're stopping a moment to look at what established love looks like, or what I would say, what seems to everyone as the best is not so good. You think Shlomo HaMelech has the best love life? He can't even go to sleep without having guards surrounding him. You think Shlomo HaMelech has intimacy? He has all the maids of Yerushalayim in his bed. This is the exact opposite of the love of Shir HaShirim. This is a comment that's being cynical about Shlomo HaMelech, who could build himself the most beautiful bed and then not find one woman to have a relationship with it in it.
He's commenting on himself.
And no, this is not him commenting about himself. This is the woman saying, look what Shlomo HaMelech did. It could be that Shlomo HaMelech is also, right, describing his own problem as he does in Kohelet, for example. But I think she's saying, and then she's saying, Tzeno ena bnot Zion. She's telling the maids of Zion, go look at Shlomo HaMelech with this beautiful crown his mother made to him. Now, why is this chazak? Because a moment ago, where did she take her beloved? To her mother's room. She knows what it means to be in intimacy with this mother in the background. But look what Shlomo's mother did. She did an external, not in her room. She did an external relationship with her son, where all what she was able to do was give him a crown. But this establishment had not being fruitful in a relationship way. So it's two perushim. I don't know which one is. Chazal looked at this pasuk and said that this pasuk is very important because it describes Melech Shlomo as Hashem, according to Chazal. And what did he do? What is Yom Chatunato b'Yom Simchat Libo? So they say Yom Chatunato is the day where he gave Am Yisrael the Torah, and Yom Simchat Libo is the day of the building of Beit HaMikdash.
Shlomo,
Mm-hmm.
I think two separate questions. Just from a narrative perspective, it's confusing what this is supposed to do, like what we're supposed to take from it, or what's the takeaway. And also, does this mean that, like, is this talking about Melech Shlomo here alluding back to the very beginning when she was talking about being with the king, maybe being taken by him or being with him somehow, that we were talking about last week?
So that's what I think needs to be brought in here. I'll explain first of all the way the song is built is that you could read this as its own poem, right? This whole description of Shlomo Melech is not dependent on a story of what we saw and what we will see. That's why I said it's sort of an echo on what we're seeing. And the question is, what is the message? Is the message that this is echoing? Is this echoing the ideal love that's described in Shir HaShirim and strengthening it by the love that we see from Shlomo HaMelech? That's the first option. I would say that's the chiyuvi option, the positive way of looking at these psukim. Or the negative way of looking at it as this is echoing as opposed to the authentic love that's described with all its problems, it's all its pain, but described here in Shir HaShirim up to now, we're echoing what does it look like when love is not built like that, when love is structured and organized.
Right. So if that's
what I would say,
if that's the interpretation, then what are we supposed to? What is the point? Like, what do we need to learn from that? If it's number two,
if we need to learn from this is that if you thought what we were describing until now is that the love in Shir HaShirim is not really happening yet, right? Why? Because they don't meet each other. And then she goes out in the middle of the night and looks for him. And then she grabs him and brings him into her house. And then she goes to her friends and says to them, don't arise the love, right? Which is the second time in Shir HaShirim she's saying. Basically, we're at a point of the story where we're like, what's going on? Are you guys going to get together or not? Right? Are you with me on this point? That's where we got to. It's not clear to the reader, is this couple, is this going to work or not? Okay, you guys are much in love, but you're not, you need to take the next step. You need to be serious about it, as we say to the young people, right? And I think these psukim come and tell us, you want us to be serious? Look what it looks like to be serious. Look what it looks like to be established. Shlomo HaMelech is described as the most established person or most established love, but how do you say mechirim? The prices of it is
right.
The price is that he's paranoid and that he has no intimacy. It's kind of clear for me. I don't know how to relate it more than that. It's coming here to draw us the option that is not preference for the Shir HaShirim writer or composer.
Okay.
I don't think I answered
wait,
you.
But wait, no, because I'm trying to understand, are we supposed to be like, the goal of this being part of Tanakh is that there's supposed to be takeaways from us, right? So are we supposed to be
takeaway is not to be like Shlomo.
Okay, so that's what I'm asking. Is that we're not supposed to be like Shlomo?
That's according. The takeaway is this is how, but it's written in such a cynical way because she says to the girls, "Tzena en avnot Zion b'melech Shlomo." Go look at his beauty, right? But basically, she's saying this ironically. She's saying, "You go and deal with that kind of love. I'm gonna stick to my kind of love." And I think that's teaching us what are the prices of being established? What are the prices of being organized? What is the prices of not giving the love its space to evolve and to create and to be built? Okay, I see our time is I thought we would finish all of Shir HaShirim today. I guess we're gonna have to.
One day you're gonna learn
another shiur into this. No, Shir HaShirim could be learned for a year. It's not.
Yeah.
I'm gonna skip a little bit. Over here, he describes the beauty of her. And again, everything is an analogy, every word, every pasuk. Hinach yafa rayati, you're so beautiful, you're so great. And then he says to her what she says to him. Ad sheyafuach hayom v'nasu atzlalim, until the day will completely arise and the shadows will be moved away. Elech li el har amor ve'el givat halevona. I'm gonna go. She said to him, and he says, "I'll do that. You know what? I'll do that." Kulach yafa rayati u'mumda'en bach. You're so beautiful, and you have no blemish. And she says to him, "You should go," and he describes her beauty. And then he says this, and this is important to see this part of Shir HaShirim. And he says to her like this: "Gan na'ul achoti chala, gal na'ul ma'ayan chatum." You're a garden locked. A garden locked is my own. My bride, a fountain locked, a sealed up spring. Shlachayich pardes rimonim impri megadim kfarim niradim. Right, you're like pomegranates and beautiful fruit. Nered v'charkom, and all these beautiful fragrance. Im kol atzei levona, mor v'a'alot im kol rashi besamim. Ma'ayan ganim be'er mayim chayim v'nozlim min Lebanon. Your garden spring, a well of fresh water, all rill of Lebanon. Right, Lebanon is the north part of Israel where there's a lot of water. What is he describing her? Right? Before he described her as being very fruitful, now he's describing her as a garden. Gan, maybe a little bit reminding us of Gan Eden. But what he's describing her is that she is locked. What does that mean, that she's locked? That she's faithful. Chazal understand this as her being faithful to him. She has all this shefa, all this water and life that she could be giving, but she's concealing it. She's locking it from others. And then he says to her, "Awake, urit safon uboy teman, hafichi gani izlu besamav." I want you to water my garden. Yavod odin egano ve'ochel pri migadav. I want to come to my garden, and what does he say here? And eat or enjoy my fruit. And the next pasuk is Bate legani achoti chala, ariti morim besami, achalti yarim divshi, shatiti yeinim chalavi. I came to my garden, my sister, my bride, or my bride, right? Ariti murim besami. I put them all together. The mor is the smell and the fragrance and all the how do you say shmanim, oils. I had my honeycomb and drank my wine and my milk. This pasuk, according to the Perushim, is the only time that's described in an analogy and in a very poetic way, an intimate relationship between both of them. He says to her, "You're a Mayan Khatum, you're a closed, sealed spring from others, but come and give me my water." Being concealed from others is also is the ability for you to be devoted to that one that you belong to, right? Obviously, this is describing a sexual relationship, but in a deeper way, it's describing, again, this intimacy between the soul and God, between Am Yisrael and God, being concealed from others. So on a very simple way, not doing Avodah Zarah, right? Am Yisrael not belonging to Avodah Zarah makes them belong to God. The exclusivity, right? This belonging. And he says to her, or the soul, letting the soul not be devoted to other aspects in life allows it to be devoted to God and to have a relationship that connects between both aspects. Okay, should we stop here, because the next pasuk is starts another theme, another part of the play. The most intense part. I guess we'll have to do that next week. Maybe by Pesach we'll finish. The Shir Hashirim, but I don't know how to summarize what we just learned. But I think to summarize what we just learned was to say that we started out with this ping pong between him and her, right? Being hidden and trying to create a relationship while being hidden. Then we described a sort of echoing this 2 times with Bnot Yerushalayim, with this choir that she's trying to tell them not to push the love before it's time for it. We paralleled it to the state of Shlomo HaMelech's intimacy, asking, is this something that describing what she's sort of striving to be in, or is she actually saying this is really the exact opposite of what I want to be in? And then we saw the last part where the man describes her beauty and describes her greatness, and then he also describes her devotion only to him, which allows them to get to a relationship of intimacy. And obviously this being an analogy to the relationship between Am Yisrael and Hashem, between our neshama, our soul, and God, really getting to this place in Shir Hashirim where, again, this is the only pasuk, I think, according to what I understand. Maybe there's another place where Mamash describes the intimacy between them. So, Bezrat Hashem, whoever has time until next week to do homework and read, we got to, what is this, Perek? We got to the 5th chapter. So if you want to read along from the 5th chapter, you could help me next week to be more clear and
okay.
Thank you.
Being all organized.
Very complicated.
To your point.